Table or truth?
Sit back, just relax for a couple minutes. You know, there's no rush. Do you want something to drink or?
Good. Thank you.
Just good to just unwind despite everything around. You know.
Yes.
I have a lot of notes that I took over the week, considering the insanity of current events. But it's nice to just enjoy a moment. I say, like I worked all day today and wasn't too bad. You know. The only thing is the daylight is just a little bit of a vex. Now that it feels like daylight savings jump-started a week or two in advance, because I swear it feels like it's already daylight savings. It's just not right. You got to work, it's pitch black, and it's like, and daylight savings hasn't even hit yet, right? So, I mean.
That's correct. Well, the cancellation of daylight saving.
They didn't cancel it this year, did they?
No. We are currently in daylight savings time.
Right.
We go to normal time, first week in November, Sunday.
Oh, I always thought daylight savings was actually like for the winter months, not the other way around.
Oh, see. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, like normal, pleasant, sunny summer hours. You know, those are like the normal, like 8 a.m. or 5 a.m. to like, 8 p.m. And now we're stuck in like living on the moon of Europa or whatever, outside. It's a little bit of a drag, but I guess some extra vitamin D, and I should be all right. I think that's my only big woe. That, and I guess current events,
Yes.
But welcome to another episode of Table for Truth. I don't think we normally like introduce ourselves like formally. We tend to just skip ahead and go straight to the talk. And half of these are clips anyway, so we're not going to do that. But for the record, I think this is full episode podcast, maybe 7.
Well,
congratulations. Congratulations us for almost 2 months of just pure lunacy ensuing.
But we were just talking about daylight savings time and how you were losing some energy because it's getting dark now before the end of daylight savings. Daylight saving actually begins on the second Sunday in March each year. And so it ends the first Sunday of November.
And then we go back to what? Otherwise normal time?
That would be the normal time.
Really?
Yeah. So a couple of years ago, the senator from Florida, whose name escapes me currently, it'll pop up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I wake up. He proposed a cancellation nationwide of daylight savings time so that we don't have to move the clocks back and things like that.
You know what the Antichrist is supposed to do in like the Book of Revelation kind of stuff?
That I don't know. I didn't know about canceling.
Changing the times and the dates and
perpetual darkness.
Well, keep an eye out for that guy, I suppose. But I had a kind of a title for this one, not to sound grim, but how do we avoid, not me and you, but like the human race at this point? We're gonna do our best tonight to try to come up with all the variables possible on how the human race, or at least the establishments that govern all the governments of the human race, could avoid World War III. That was what I was thinking.
May I?
Yes. Whatever you're going to propose.
It will be you posing this, because I look at humans are flawed and we make mistakes, but you have a more positive outlook on if human beings change and adapt your philosophy, then we'd live in a nice, peaceful world.
Well, I appreciate that. I guess you're referring to, I wish I knew my one episode's better, but episode, I think that's 6-2 maybe, or 6-3. Folks, tune into that one, I guess, if you want archives. I came up with this random rant soliloquy on how humanity could be saved by understanding a concept of, I think it was spiritual mechanics.
Yes, I wouldn't call it random. I've heard your philosophy in the past.
It was rehearsed, but not rehearsed for the show per se. No. But yeah, my little wellness trainer side kind of kicked in, and all of a sudden I was in the zone. So yeah, go back to that one. But I think in this one today, we're going to take a look at a couple of current events And I'm going to propose a couple things, and then we could just kind of work off of that, because I saw a couple episodes of various interviews of individuals that really made me ponder what the hell's going on here. All right, for this show, we'd be referencing 2 points of source that honestly I found pretty intriguing, and I think they're worth a watch. I should try to put some links to these two. They're involving the musings of one Colonel Douglas McGregor. One of the episodes is titled Douglas McGregor, We Are Getting Closer to World War III, on the Douglas McGregor Daily podcast. That was pretty interesting. And then the second batch of notes would have been from a nice little resource that I find very eye-opening, but I mean, you be the judge, audience. It's called The Stephen Gardner Show, where Colonel Douglas McGregor is invited as a guest, and the title is Colonel McGregor Shares Bombshell Intel on Ukraine and Israel. We'll be going over some of the main themes that he brings about on both of these shows. Stuff worth actually really discussing in a whole community here on the internet. Now, I'm not trying to downplay the credibility of our own show by looking at resource material from other shows, but let's be real. Podcasts do that all the time anyway for references. And honestly, it's good to share the wealth, because this isn't about self-glory here for our little slice of entertainment on the internet for ourselves. This is about talking about real topping points that everyone arguably should be meditating on during these uncertain times. If you don't like the stress of thinking of the threat of war lingering in the back of your mind and you want to get rid of that, then one of the best things one can do logistically is to, through knowledge and understanding, reason out that monkey off your back and be able to predict what really is going to happen, despite what the media is telling you and the vibes and the pulses of the nation for the time being. So, I mean, people can't control everything about current events, but they can definitely talk to each other, reason together, and come up with functional solutions on how you could stop something like World War III. But to do that, you need to be versed in some sort of knowledge about what's going on geopolitically. So hopefully this show helps anybody who feels uncomfortable at a dinner party and the thought of war is looming up as a topic of conversation, but everybody's afraid to talk about it because they don't really ultimately know what they're talking about. They don't want to offend anybody. Facts and good questions to ask each other is the order of the day. So, yeah, hopefully this is educational and entertaining. But anyway, enjoy the episodes. Without further ado, let's just start the podcast.
You tossed a podcast who was featuring retired Army Colonel Douglas McGregor.
Yes, indeed, I did. Okay, the name of the podcast was David Gardner. Yes, thank you for that. I can grab that actually.
All right, too late. Okay, sorry, bro. I'm sorry. I'm Shaq, and you're Kenny Jet.
Kenny G, actually. I love music. Anyway, sorry about that. On a more serious note, this is, I don't know, man. There's really no way to go about this, but yeah, I'm watching some of those shows, and I can go back to the reference of what it was. You heard about the Israeli airplane was attempted to arrive in Russia, and then the tarmac was infiltrated with what, let me see if I can look at my notes here, what many observed as Arab immigrants from within Russia chanting Allahu Akbar, and they were admitting their desire to lynch literally Jews, which is crazy. You can look this one up.
When did this occur?
This happened, I believe, within the last 24 to 48 hours. I have to. I'll have to send the links or whatever.
You are hip.
I'm, I guess, hipper than this incident. I don't know. So people have been asking on the internet, and actually, this colonel, I believe, had brought up his own 2 points on this. But at first, people were wondering if this was another Hamas greatest hits kind of influence. I guess in the PR, the world press, this is making the Palestinians look like heels. I think is the overall consensus. If I watch the comments on any of these videos that show that airport raid by Hamas supporters, or at least Palestinian sympathizers. Well, I guess what are your thoughts on that, first of all?
Well, I haven't seen this particular incident, but what we have been seeing in the United States, which has gone a reaction from the DOJ and the president is that on college campuses, what we have been seeing is some anti-Semitism being posted on the college chat boards, which is a concern. So the question is, as some believe, for hundreds of years, and it's occurring now in 2023, are the Jews being treated differently after being hit on October 7th than any other group who would have donned the sympathy of the world, and it faded quickly. What we saw, particularly after the hospital parking lot bombing,
Yeah.
in which was done by the Islamic Jihad, a smaller terrorist group in Gaza, uh, but Israel got the blame, and we saw all over the world demonstrations on that, blaming Israel
Yeah.
for that bombing. But then those people, I didn't see them on October 8th, October 9th, coming out against Hamas and the
friendly
barbaric.
fire, right?
No. On October 7th is when Hamas went into Israel.
Oh, yeah.
And killed thousands of people, or 1,500 or so, and brutally cutting off the heads of children, raping women and such, and then posting these things, let alone taking back in the Gaza, 250 hostages or so.
Yeah. So,
but there was no mass protest you see around the world of people coming out and protesting, or
it's definitely disconcerting because let me add some other variables here to this so we can get perspective. Because the theme tonight is really, how does one avoid World War III, right? So I think that the hardest thing to do is to try to understand both sides. I feel like this Colonel McGregor had some observations on where things are going. I mean, the guy's a colonel, or retired colonel, I believe. So it turns out that the people that raided the tarmac, the majority of them, according to Colonel McGregor, were influenced by a Turkish leader named Erdogan, I believe his name is. I have to look that one up. Yeah. They went there enraged, obviously, at what's happening in Gaza. The bottom line is, how in the world does this make, especially if you're Jewish, you feeling safe here? Some people are claiming that the press is twisting the story, showing that the members of the demographic there that had raided the airport are more against Israelis, not actually local Jews in the region. That was some claims, but I don't know where you find the proof of that. Bottom line, a flight was coming in. Well, it was an Israeli flight that was coming into that region of the world, like in the Russian area. And word got out somehow that flight was coming in, and then it incited this big all-out riot where people, you can watch the videos, but it's insane. People literally broke through security and rushed into the air, like World War Z style, like rushed into the actual runway. And the flight was actually rerouted wisely before they landed, because at that point, the whole idea was to just drag anybody that was Jewish or Israeli out of that plane, which I think is just nuts. Like, what leads you to get to that level of just blind rage? I mean, I understand the idea that there's innocents that are being victims here in the Palestinian region, but are there people? I guess it's a naive question. I'm like, are there just too few of us that see the cause and effect of why these things happen, and when to kind of hold our anger on stuff and understand why the cause and effects of repercussions happen? Is this just a new concept of the human condition, or is this just because the majority of younger people have not experienced that level of wisdom yet, and they just get incentivized to feel some sort of justified righteousness to what they think is a noble cause, but without having a sporosity of understanding all the mechanics of reality? They're just reliving history in the most brutal and primitive way, instigating wars, disputes, and eventually, who knows, contributing to World War III. I don't know. I mean, the majority of the people that invaded the tarmac looked to be pretty young. So that tells you a lot. Young individuals, kind of hot-headed. Where the hell are the elders in this? I guess it's a great question, but you haven't really seen the video, so you probably kind of just
look
sort of
that up
shocked at that
immediately.
one. Yeah.
No, but one of the things that, yeah, this is nothing new. The Middle East have been fighting each other for a long time, and let alone, the Jewish question, wherein, they made a Jewish state
Yeah.
because of the final barbarism that occurred with the Jews in Nazi Germany.
Right.
And the extermination of 6 million Jews. And at the time, there are some who are putting out false information or belief that there was a Palestinian state, but there was not one there. And so the other thing with the Palestinian people, where you have other people who are for the Palestinians, and I believe that they should have their own state. We don't see the support. There's no offering from those who are protesting, whether it's Qatar, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Saudi Arabia, to take in some of the Palestinians until this conflict is over.
That's exactly what Colonel McGregor said, by the way. Well said. Like, if they're so justified, there's a little trifle of hypocrisy here by the Middle East getting so enraged at the injustice of the Palestinians. This is the intellectual food for thought, I guess, who's anybody who's sympathizing for the Palestinian cause. It's the classic, you say the injustice, but you won't take them in, and it's like, this actually brings up a point that a friend of mine had thrown out there to me a couple days ago. I was watching pro wrestling. Like, I was actually at a live pro wrestling event here in Worcester, go figure. But we were talking, and he had brought up an interesting point. The bottom line is, if the individuals from Gaza, the Palestinians who had freely decided to take the proverbial exodus out of Gaza during this time of crisis, have complied, is it fair to say that in one way to avoid World War III or any escalations, Israel should show the upper hand of dignity and provide literally safe passage? Be the proverbial, the Red Sea parting as they allow the Gaza Palestinians safe passage across Israel to a safer spot.
Yeah, but who's going to take it? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You hear all this sympathy for the Palestinian people, but no one has volunteered to take them.
Sounds like Eric Adams from the. Oh, sorry, you're.
And then I don't look at
people. Yeah,
I don't look at this conflict escalating to I got my air quotes up, a World War III. Some are pushing that, and my problem with I had some problems with McGregor during the podcast. One of the things that he was saying was that Ukraine was done, and Russia was basically just biding their time and making gains, and Ukraine is basically a defeated team. I'm paraphrasing. The other thing he said was that China wasn't a problem for us here in the United States. And that's bothersome, particularly if I look at all the hacking and intellectual property stealing that China has been doing. And again, with Taiwan sitting there in the background, that has always been a concern for me in the United States and hopefully the rest of the world getting how they're going to get their chips. But one thing that McGregor didn't say or mention during that broadcast was he didn't mention the horrific attack, or I didn't note it, of Hamas on Israel on October 7th. Maybe it's just because that's a known factor, and he was going into his reasonings why he thinks this is going to, or a chance to go, World War III. He did acknowledge that United States, Russia, or China are not going to use nuclear weapons.
Well, that's good news.
But he did say that because Israel does have nukes, and if Turkey wanted to, they could get nukes from Pakistan.
Yeah. I remember hearing that part too.
I didn't know Turkey and Pakistan were that tight, particularly since we're still sending money to Pakistan.
I'm going to assume the general knows something we don't, but who knows?
He's not a general. That's another problem.
Oh, I'm sorry,
He's
Colonel.
just a
Colonel. Sorry, my bad.
He's a colonel, retired colonel, and so he's given his opinion. I don't mind people's opinion. I'm there to listen. So, but that was my take. Oh, the other thing he was talking about was the increase our fleet over in the Middle East, and if this conflict does expand, he said we're not ready, and I find that hard to believe. United States is the greatest power on earth at this time.
Actually, I took some notes on what he was saying here, so let me see if I can, I don't know, counter it, but just make some observations.
Sure.
By the way, the name of this article, just so people know what in the world we're talking about, Douglas McGregor, we're getting closer to World War III, in the Stephen Gardner show, where Colonel Douglas McGregor is invited as a guest, and the title is Colonel McGregor Shares Bombshell Intel on Ukraine and Israel. Yeah, I'm really interested to hear what he has to say. I'm not saying everybody just follow everything, take it with a grain of salt, but I mean, he brought some interesting points. Amongst the points that he brought up, the colonel feels that invading Gaza is not a logistically good idea by Israel, and if Israel does that, many casual ties and political relationships all over the world will just get worse, which does sound like a real concern. I mean, according to him, the Turks claim that if Israel does not stop what they're doing, then Turkey will go to war with Israel. I'm not sure if that's an absolute observation, but something to consider. But at the same time, the Sunnis and I believe the Shias,
yes,
have actually teamed up for the first time with a common enemy. So, I mean, that shows you how polarized this is. That's not a good sign. Now, according to what the colonel said, the U.S. Army is down to 450,000 demoralized troops that are not really in top form. That might have something to do with the wokeness happening in the military that one hears about. I have a friend who's actually in the Navy, and he told me that I don't know, like a lot of them don't take the ideologies seriously of at least the woke kind of whatever spin that they try to impart into the culture.
What is wokeness?
Oh man, we did this before. What wokeness is basically the well-intended idea of politically correct etiquette towards one another that's respectful, that in theory brings you to a state of enlightenment. But there's so many.
As you describe it, is that not a good thing?
I think you're going to have to refer it. See, this is the beauty of having a podcast. I can actually reference our own rants, and you could refer to, I think it's episode 3 where we actually talked about this, and you even asked me the same question. So go refer and reference and study.
Well, I don't remember the answer. You're
going to have to watch the episode, man. Yeah, right. Wokeness isn't good. Let's put it that way. It's
really?
well-intended, but it's not good.
But you just said that it was basically utopia.
That's the intention, but it's been twisted by either the establishment or some powers that be behind the scenes and weaponized. The kind of the way the Catholic Church was weaponized in the Middle Ages, or take any good intended philosophy that all of a sudden gets corrupted, right? By some power hungry individuals that try to politicize or weaponize it to meet an agenda that isn't necessarily holistic. Okay, so woke isn't good. But going back to the demoralized troops here, the colonel said that the U.S., if they were to join into this conflict in Israel, they could definitely do airstrikes and cruise missiles. Of course, if they do that, Turkey will join in against Israel, and by default, possibly Russia, since Russia's an ally, and didn't take too kindly to the idea that Israel was supporting Ukraine, supposedly.
You know what the problem is?
They'll turn their preferences against it. This raid in the tarmac of the airport may be a sign of that.
No, well, the problem with that theory is Russia can't take Ukraine. They can't fight 2 wars.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But so the colonel strongly is concerned that the Israelis, even though he supports, I don't want to I don't want to misquote here, but I believe he supports Israelis' retribution in the sense that it's a justified feeling of injustice.
What was
Right?
his solution?
Well, the truth is, he just cautioned the reality that Israelis have to realize that if they attack, they might have to fight the whole Muslim world. And that's the big concern. And of course, now the U.S., because they said that they're going to stand by Israel no matter what, therein lies a concern by a lot of domestic citizens here, regardless of how they feel about Israel.
Well,
This is the concern.
Anyone can throw a grenade. What's his solution? I didn't hear his solution. What should Israel do about the attack that they suffered on October 7th?
Well, that's just it. It's not an easy. I don't know if he had a solution actually.
Right.
In fact, I can actually play some of his quotes. I could probably edit it a little bit so it sounds cleaner during the podcast. But let me play a couple things that he said, and then you
Okay.
tell me.
So you're coming off of his podcast, or just the one where he was a guest on someone else's show?
I'm actually coming off on. Actually, sorry to confuse you. Yeah, the one that I'm about to play is when he was a guest very recently on a podcast. I believe it's the Stephen Gardner Show. And he brought up an interesting observation, which I'd like to play right now. Let me see if I can find this one.
Now, the Israelis, in the meantime, could they have done things differently? Well, of course, but we don't know the whole story. We can't recount everything here. My point is that this is not something that suddenly happened that was never going to happen. This was inevitable. The circumstances changed, and it happened. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And the Israelis have decided that it's time for the people in Gaza to go away. This is not an exercise in counterinsurgency. The Israelis are not clearing and holding something. They are expelling or killing and then permanently removing whatever they find. And their view is, if you're there with Hamas, if you're in the vicinity of Hamas, you're an enemy. You're a combatant, you deserve to die. Now, we in the United States, as a general rule, do not support collective punishment, which is what we're talking about. We find that unacceptable, violating the so-called laws of war and humanity. But that's what's happening. And the Israelis, as a result, have provoked the entire Muslim world. I told a friend of mine, who actually, we've known each other for years, he's also an Israeli citizen, and he pointed out, he said, Douglas, we have managed something no one else in history has done. We have united the Sunni and the Shia. Well, he's right. He's right. That's the problem. And never before have the Israelis had to face in direct combat Turks, Persians, and Arabs all together. That's where we're headed. That's why I wrote the piece I did in the American Conservative called Avoiding Armageddon. If something isn't done and the Israelis go into Gaza and continue these operations, not only will they face Hezbollah on the northern front, they're going to face the rest of the region.
Well, that's more or less the concern.
He's in his car making his own broadcast.
No, that was actually me in the car with the wipers going on. And I apologize. Again, I'm going to clean up the actual edit here so people don't have to hear the wipers going.
Are you kidding me? I thought it was him in his car, and I'm going, what? Why is he in his car?
No, me being the effective gumshoe, I sacrifice life and limb while on the road in the rain to try to record that. Yeah. I think there's some merit to what he's saying, but you're right. He doesn't provide any real solution. He just says, "Don't
right. Exactly. Don't do this.
Don't do this."
It's like, well, what are they supposed to do?
Well, that's just it. If they do this,
Colonel,
I guess the question is what's the lesser of two evils, though? If they do this, right? It's hard to say. What do people think about this? This could easily create a crisis. Actually, you know what he brings up? More than anything, he's concerned that the Israelis are not going to be able to last against the entire Muslim world attacking them on all fronts.
The entire Muslim world is not going to attack Israel.
You don't think so?
No.
If that's the case, here's another question: does the U.S. really need to get involved besides just lending armaments like they did with Ukraine at
Yes,
best?
yes.
Get involved in an actual war?
Well, not necessarily. We are there in the Middle East as a deterrent for others, as President Biden says. Don't. Now, some of the terrorist groups that Iran supports, have crept out and thrown a few drones out at us, Syria and other places, and we've knocked those down, and will retaliate when necessary. But the whole thing is to keep others from joining in. That's why we're there.
Okay, that's fair, like a big hall monitor. But what about the potential? This all escalating somehow to World War III, I suppose, is the other concern.
I don't see it.
You
I
don't
just
see
don't
it?
see it. Because again, China, and here's a, China doesn't want this. Hell, they got, as you're aware, their own economic problems,
Right.
and so they don't want this. So they're not joining the fight. Russia can't join the fight. Remember, they're getting drones from North Korea and support from for munitions from North Korea. They're getting drones from Iran, so they they can't fight anybody. So Russia's off the board in this.
So you don't think Russia would join in?
No,
I think all major countries are reluctant to want to get into a World War III. They realize it's not economically.
Well, Russia can't because they've already proven that they can't hang with anybody on the battlefield.
Here's the thing, though. I believe the same Colonel McGregor made an observation about Russia's front in Ukraine, which a lot of people don't seem to understand, according to him. It's not that they're being held back. They actually have stayed their grounds and gone at snail's pace further down in Ukraine because they've reached the basic objectives they wanted, which I believe was Odessa and Crimea, I think it was.
Well, they took over Crimea under Obama's administration. So
right. So then they also now have, I believe, the region or the area of Odessa. That was the claim. I don't know my geography.
I need to check that, but I heard him say that. But the whole thing is
so they
that's
really
not. But that's not what he wanted.
No,
in 4 days he wanted to take over the capital and take over the entire country. He failed. Remember, they went in also from the north, took over some territory, and got their asses beat back.
According to this colonel, it seems that Putin is satisfied enough actually just reaching his objective as it is.
Well, I disagree. The deal is the counteroffensive has not gone very, very well or quickly. And again, the Russians are dug in. It's easy to defend the place that's dug in than taking it back. But all Putin is, in my humble opinion, is waiting for the 2024 election to see who's president. And if President Trump becomes president again, he feels he's in a better position than if Biden.
Because he can eventually achieve what the colonel is claiming is actually the real objective. It's not trying to invade Europe or anything. It's more the idea that once he's taken Kharkov, I believe, in the north and Odessa in the south, then Russia regains the land that it was originally interested in and justified that they feel was exactly like Russian. And Ukraine is a logistical dead end for the West to really invest any more in it because the objectives are achieved. Like we're basically continuing a war and supporting Ukraine as much as it sucks that like Ukraine's been a pawn in this whole thing. But we're basically supporting a war in Ukraine now for what? Oh no, we're supporting it on the assumption that Putin wants to pull a Hitler and just keep expanding the territory, deeper and deeper into Europe. And I mean, if he's really slowed down militarily like this, not because he can't do any better, but because logistically, like you said, he's waiting for the 2024 election. Not only that, but he's kind of achieved the objectives he wants, and
He did. He failed miserably.
but he still achieved the objectives of taking over these spots. So
They had that prior to his full invasion. Remember that territory in
he had. You're telling me
in the east.
he had
Was they've been fighting there for over 4 years.
so he's achieved nothing.
He did not achieve his objectives.
He may not achieve these objectives you want, but how many of us
Well,
actually achieve our objectives?
But you just said he did.
Well, you achieve the bit the more like I'll settle for this kind of objective. I think is the thought of the day. Like not just me, but this guy Colonel McGregor is really what I'm.
Let's say I don't believe in the colonel.
You don't believe in the good old colonel, huh?
No, I don't.
Well, I mean, I say Tyson knows his political game. I would assume this colonel must know something, but okay.
No, it's again this is all speculation. I grant him his and thank him for his military service, but I think he's wrong in a whole lot of areas. He made some assumptions. I think again, him saying that the U.S. military is not prepared for war, he's wrong.
He's wrong.
That's
not just an opinion.
Right, he's wrong.
The demoralization of U.S. troops is a myth.
Yes.
The wokeness infiltrating the ranks of
we
military
have
culture
the
is
best
a myth.
fighting force on this planet.
As good as it was 20 years ago.
Good as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
We're better than we were 20 years ago.
Because technology or because the troops are moralized and there's more of them?
Well, technology is everything. When you have bow and arrows going against a flintlock, technology.
It wasn't. Is that what you said?
Flintlock.
Oh, okay. I was like
rifle.
Chanclas.
No.
You got like a bunch of Mexican moms.
That's technology. You didn't need as many people in order to conquer a nation as what happened, in the United States.
Well, just wait till that UFO technology comes out by Boeing or whatever, huh? Well, okay, so I guess things are going to be okay if I put my full faith in your words.
No, there will not be a World War III. We're not headed towards a World War.
We're not headed toward a World War because everybody's broke.
It's not.
It just doesn't want to deal with it.
Because I believe McGregor said that Congress is not Putin, the president of Israel.
Netanyahu or
Netanyahu. Thank you.
Yes.
Is Congress is Netanyahu's puppet. That's one of the things he said. And he said, we have cash all over it. And then he brought up your term, the industrial...
Military... Okay, so that brings me to actually another point here, okay?
I hesitate.
Yeah, no, but you got to bring it up because, like, why is that such a crazy concept, okay?
So it's ridiculous.
Oh, so the military-industrial complex at the end of the rainbow isn't really responsible for all of this. Like
that's exactly what he said. He said that they manufacture this so that this war with Hamas and Israel and the United States is taking advantage of it.
Why does it sound so insane to this day? I don't understand. Like that's exactly what the military-industrial complex does. It profiteers off any munitions they can give on either side. Mm-hmm. And as long as they don't get bombed...
and you're right. Speaking of that, he also said that the United States is basically funding both sides of every...
Not the United States per se, but the military-industrial complex.
Well...
lobbyists in government that are in cahoots with them.
So where is the military-industrial complex?
The elusive military. It's all over the world.
So it's a world thing. Because I always looked at that as a United States thing. It's not. It's a world thing.
Well, they're globalists that control everything around the world economically, and they just happen to benefit from the being stationed here in the United States. That's the overall conspiracy theory theme.
So
it doesn't sound so insane though when you think about it.
Industrial complex and globalists are the same? Is that what you're saying?
Globalists that are able to set up factories and just have dealings all over the world no longer care. I hate to say it, but Alex Jones doesn't sound so insane on this. Okay, mega corporations that can benefit from any country in the world, all right, and all they care about is profits. They don't care about the culture and the sanctity of human life and just good economic health for governments and countries all over the world. They're as powerful as countries. They're just behind the scenes. They're able to get their tentacles in the politics because they buy out politicians when they get in. Like what's her name? That Republican candidate, that woman that why am I getting her name off? But you know what? Nikki Haley, right? Like warmongering politicians, and you're like, why are you so trigger happy? And then you're like, oh, you got ties with the military industrial complex one way or another. Is that it? That's the general uh, middle class poor man's guess as to why in the world this would be happening. And I don't think that's insane.
So would you say that BP is a globalist?
It's a
Company?
global. It's a global. It's all over the world, is it not?
Yeah.
Right. Not all
So
companies.
they're globalists.
They are globalists. Yeah. They're
Okay.
But
so
they don't mind a one world system, but some are more sinister than others. Some
so
of them are willing
if they're globalists, right, and they're all about profit, how does war profit them?
Well,
Does
actually,
that not stop?
the good colonel said it himself. The fact is that lobbyists in Congress and these war profiteers are too short sighted to see the dangers of what this could do to change civilizations all over the world. There's that selfish and short sighted. And I don't think that's a crazy concept. Everybody's obsessed with global warming, which it has its place, obviously. But then the other existential threat is really a World War III being brought on. Now, good old you claims there's going to be no World War III. So, hey, I can rest tonight on that.
There you go.
But at the same time, my heart tells me that it's not that black and white. Like there is something about the way everything has been designed, manufactured. Like crises seem to be manufactured out of thin air. Most people did not want to get involved in Ukraine, but the government, the Congress insisted on, putting all this like $106 billion in that. People support Israel and they want Israel to be well. But there are a lot of people, admittedly, that are concerned about wanting to instigate a World War III, while they're defending Israel. They would rather have diplomacy, if it's possible, for Israel to restrain themselves a little bit in their retribution, if that can avoid a World War III. That, my friend, is word on the street. Okay, that's the general consensus. You talk to the clients once again up at work. That's word on the street right there. You can take that to the bank. All right. So I mean, these aren't crazy concepts. They're not like so insane that we could just sit here and laugh at that. Like again, you got a better solution. Like most of the shit's going on in the world is ultimately textbook out of like either the Third Reich, like in terms of manufacturing a crisis for some entity to rise to power, and then just justify an aggression somewhere, or just exploit an economy by, just changing the whole scope of industry one way or another at the expense of the middle class, wherever you're at, right? There's all sorts of egos involved in this, and it's naive to think or dismiss that is not one of the biggest factors as to why we seem to be steamrolling towards some sort of a conflict, even if it's not World War III. Nobody wants to start crap with the Middle East. People want to support Israel, but at the same time, it's a very delicate situation because people don't want us to indirectly get involved in a very expensive, costly, and deadly war with pretty much the Middle East if we ally with Israel. That's the concern.
So should we be America first? Just take care of ourselves.
We should try to go. According to the good colonel, he was suggesting we should be striving towards the best we can towards diplomacy, if that's possible. Which means showing
we aren't doing that. No,
I think within reason.
Remember,
how Gaza is basically raised, or I shouldn't say raised, but invaded for the next, who knows how long, is going to play a major role as the perception of who looks like a real villain in the world stage. When individuals that are more Palestinian supporters in the Muslim worlds refuse to seem to help their own paisanos, that honestly, to anybody with any kind of reasoning, would bring a heel mark on them and go, dude, it's kind of hypocritical that you're grieving all this injustice. You don't want to help your fellow brothers and sisters from the Middle East, but at the same time, is the colonel or anybody else who's trying to like mitigate a World War III scenario wrong by saying Israel has to at the same time do their best to kind of keep a somewhat dignified, if possible, approach to this retribution campaign to get rid of Hamas?
But you and the colonel, what
not just
bothers me is that you do not give the current administration enough credit for trying to settle this diplomatically. Don't forget, President Biden was on the tarmac at what used to be Andrews Air Force Base, now is Joint Task Force Andrews, whatever, on the tarmac, ready to go to Jordan over there and have a meeting with the Palestinian Authority leader who's in exile, with the Jordanians, with the Qatar and other Middle East players in order to try to find a resolution. And what happened? The president of Jordan canceled the meeting because the Islamic Jihad had a misfired missile end up in the parking lot of a hospital. The president was on the tarmac, ready to go.
Oh, by the way, it was proven that that was a friendly fire missile from the insurgents of Hamas, right? Not Israel.
Well, they're called Islamic Jihad, and so they're a smaller Palestinian terrorist group also operating in Gaza.
Okay, but it was without a doubt proven that was the missile.
Yes, because they shot 3 into Israel, and one failed to cross the border and landed in the parking lot.
I mean, logic would just tell me that why would Israel want to destroy a PR campaign by bombing a hospital? It doesn't add up. I mean, especially if they are as tactful as we're telling.
Yeah, but the thing is, once again, because of this action, right, you stopped an historic meeting amongst some of the players in the Middle East in order to try to help resolve this conflict diplomatically. So Biden had who was also gonna stop in Israel, so he just flew, met with Netanyahu, and so they had chats. Who else is asking for a temporary ceasefire, or how did he put a pause to get humanitarian aid in the Gaza? That's President Biden. Now, it's Israel's show, and so they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And so, again, you're not, whatever they're going to do. But again, you're not giving the current administration credit for the diplomatic things that they're doing. They're still working on trying to get the hostages out, working with Qatar, who's has some ties with Hamas since.
All right, I guess keep going. I mean, as absurd as the whole thing is.
Well, that's what the United States is doing.
So at the end of the day, if these claims are true that you're saying, it sounds like they are, because I mean they did go up there and try to do some diplomacy, but in Israel with kid gloves tries to neutralize the Gaza Strip from Hamas terrorists and any other insurgents, right? Then the inevitable heel in the world stage is going to be any Muslim, Palestinian, Gaza supporting countries that continue to want to warmonger this situation, and at the same time show their hypocrisy card if they're not going to provide humanitarian aid for the people of the Gaza Strip. I mean, logically, that's the only intellectually viable conclusion. And assuming we're not being brainwashed by like Western propaganda on that, but yeah, I mean,
well, because the United States has given $100 million for humanitarian aid to support the Palestinian people in Gaza, right? The other thing that's currently come out in the media with this ground offensive that has started in Gaza is that they keep saying that, oh, there's tanks on the main road in northern Gaza. That's going to keep people from getting out. They said that they wanted or warned the Palestinians who are in the north to move to the south, and now they can't go. It's like, well, tell the full story.
Right.
A week ago, Israel, in Arabic and other methods, informed the people who were in northern Gaza, we're coming in. We're going to bomb and shell. You need to move to the south where it's safer. Now, realistically, it's like, let's see, we got 2 million people in a...
Yeah, the other grievances that were in the street said that wasn't realistic. And obviously Israel knew that. That's the claim, right? That's what when I've talked to people who are more, let's just say, sympathetic towards some sort of Palestinian, cause. Not the cause, not justifying the massacre on October 7th, but just understanding the Palestinian situation in the Gaza Strip. They conclude that's not enough time realistically to
It's 25 miles long now.
25 miles long. We're not talking about like a 400-mile hike.
I'm talking about the Gaza Strip is 25 miles long.
How far from the border of Egypt to? That's right, from here to Barry.
It's 25 miles long, man.
The Gaza
from
Strip,
one end to the other,
from north to south.
Yes.
What about east to west?
I don't know. Is widest point? Am I thinking 5 miles?
What? 5 miles? So you're saying it's like a large city?
Yeah. 2 million people.
So this isn't like the Book of Exodus, where like you spend like Egypt to obviously Egypt
right.
to
Mediterranean Sea on one end, most of it because it is in Israel, so in the south, and then on the southern end you have Egypt.
So
it's 25 miles long.
You can take your bicycle and hit the wall like by the afternoon.
There you go.
Well, I mean, these are pretty reasonable variables.
And the other thing, again, with them warning the civilian population that, we're going after Hamas targets, and Hamas has set up infrastructure in civilian places. And again, a week ago, and they told them to spot to go, which is in the southwestern region of Gaza. And so that's where they can go, and humanitarian aid should get them there. My problem with Israel is that it's leaking in slowly and too slowly in order to get the necessary.
When you say leaking in, what do you mean?
The clearing of hundreds of trucks that are sitting in Egypt waiting to get in with food, water.
That's provided
medicines.
By the UN. Remind our audience of 17 maybe, unfortunately tonight. Who's funding the?
Well, I said the United States gave $100 million, and there are other Doctors Without Borders are there. We have a whole host.
But they're just sitting there in Egypt.
They're lined up in Egypt to get through it as the Israelis.
So the food will just go bad or something.
Well, I don't, not necessarily.
Why can't that caravan go into the red zone instead of the people making it in Egypt? They're not allowed.
No, they're not allowed in Egypt. So
why can't that caravan go from Egypt into Gaza Strip?
The Israelis are holding it up, or they need to inspect it. Whatever it is,
okay.
Not
So
enough
if
getting
in
there fast enough.
Okay.
But there are trucks going through everything but fuel.
Okay.
And fuel is needed in order to run the generators for water, obviously for the hospitals and things like that. But again, the fear is that Hamas will use that towards, their war against...
increasing their siege time inside the Gaza Strip because they'll just use all those supplies.
Well, that too.
Is it fair to assume that most educated individuals, even in the Muslim world, that are supporting or sympathizing the Palestinian cause can at least see the bad logistics of, for instance, Egypt not somehow allowing Israelis to, Israelis, sorry, Gaza Palestinians to get into their borders?
Oh, you can't get Palestinian Americans out. There's got to be what, I don't know, 300 or something Palestinian Americans who are trying to get out, and they can't get out.
They
And
can't.
one was Egypt not letting them through initially, but what we find out now is Hamas is not letting them out.
So, I mean, again, none of this is looking good. I mean, call me crazy, but this none. Let's say I was an alien observing from another planet. None of this is looking good in terms of PR, pro-Palestinian sympathy towards the cause of their own people that are definitely being screwed over by being exploited as human shields by Hamas, which some would argue they voted them in there, so it's what it is. But,
Well, again,
but let's not be so callous.
Well, some people say, well, there's enough of 2 million of them. Why didn't they take over Hamas? Well, when you talk about someone who will literally kill you in 2 seconds without thinking about it, that's a bit problematic.
Let's go to the second audio clip that I recorded of Colonel McGregor concerning the end, like the concerned end of how this could all end up. Just for academic purposes here. Give me a second. Let me see if I can.
Which means we are being pulled into a major regional war. We're going to be pitted against the Turks, the Iranians, all the Sunni Arab states in the region, probably states in North Africa. This will probably have an impact on the Muslims in India and certainly Pakistan. I would be surprised if it didn't also have an impact on us in Malaysia and Indonesia. And what I continue to ask people is, what makes you think Israel will survive this? That's my concern. I support Israel. I've always supported its right to exist. I think Israel should exist. I don't want to see it destroyed. But they are in a position right now where they have created an alliance against them that even with our help and assistance may not work. In other words, they may not survive. They may not prevail. I think that would be a tragedy. So it's why I've said repeatedly, we have to save Israel from itself. We understand the anger and the emotion, but we have no leadership and we have no strategy.
All right. Well, what do you think of the good colonel's last?
He's blaming Israel for this war. That's exactly what he did.
Once again, that was Stephen Gardner's audio show with Colonel
Douglas
McGregor. And when was that posted? It was posted literally, I think it was today. I just want to, for academic purposes here, get everybody to get a glimpse of this thing. But
and he's talking about Turkey getting on this thing. That's I just don't see it. I do not see it. He's also talking that India and Pakistan is going to get it. It's like, that's not happening. That is not happening.
Because everybody's too boggled down with their own problems.
Now, I'm not saying that there may not be a problem with coming out of Lebanon or a problem that Iran may escalate this, but anybody else, I don't see it.
You just don't see it.
I don't see it.
Oh, okay, sorry. It was Colonel McGregor's shares bombshell intel on Ukraine and Israel. I believe that was the name of the actual episode, and it's the Stephen Gardner show. Not to take away all the fans of our little excursion here, but I'm sure there's enough pie to go around. So, okay, you don't see it. It's all just kind of like good old fear porn, if you will.
Well, it's not that. It's, again, you try to look at a big picture, and if you're, want to look at just worst case scenario, World War III, we got, I've seen that too often. And once again, when this thing is resolved, however however it is resolved, and these things don't come to light or come even close, you won't see McGregor come on his or anyone else's show and say, I was dead wrong.
Right, right. So we're looking forward to more of a gilded future in the near future of the same old that we're dealing with now, which is more the biggest threat is really a stress of uncertainty about life as opposed to physical wars and famines and plagues and
No, it's
violence.
a shame. Again, in 2023, or actually before that, if you look at the invasion of Ukraine from Russia, why are we still having that? The UN was created after World War II
To stop this kind
exactly,
of stuff.
and to resolve these issues. But what you do have is, again, terrorists are hard to stop, hard to understand. There are things I don't get. How killing an innocent civilian is going to stop things.
I think I know why this happens, by the way.
Why?
Well, here comes my sort of esoteric rant of the evening. The problem is that once a certain generation of individuals, or the majority of them, get it right, so to speak, right, and understand the lack of benefits of that kind of thinking and existence and attitudes towards reality, right, of just like, well, it's like my friend Dave used to say, slapping it around, right? The point is, once a generation gets to that level, right, of wisdom, the problem is that we're mortal, and so we reset the scale every 20 to 30 years. And so the next generation that's hot-headed, full of fire, but uncontrolled and lacking wisdom, has to go through their existential path of, their odyssey, if you will, of trying to figure out the things that matter in life until they finally get it right, hopefully by the time they're 50, if they make it mentally. And then it just keeps resetting it over and over, because it's usually the hot-headed individuals that think they can change the world, think they know something that the older generation doesn't know, because they look at their circumstance and just go, well, this economic hardship is the fault of the boomers or something, let's say. And there may be some elements of truth to it, but it's not 100% truth, right? And one of the most dangerous things that humans tend to do is base their lives and ideologies on ideologies that are half-truths. Because half-truths can get you killed or just keep you in a level of mediocrity that cuts off your true happiness at the kneecaps. But we don't learn these kinds of mechanisms because we never study consciousness. We're not taught to. There's very few people in our lives, in our circles, that can give us wisdom, like some guru, and explain to us like the real true values of life and why they're beneficial to the human condition in terms of mental, spiritual, and emotional health, and physical health too. And so, because we don't do that, we're just busy going through our daily lives, and those things that will just give us a little bit of sense of purpose and thrill, we'll go join the next protest because we'll feel important, and we may not even understand fully the protest. But from our point of view, we really do feel what we feel in our heart, and we're justified in our heads because we don't understand the metaphysics of reality on a bigger scale. And so we're just fighting for our little kingdom, right? Or our little clique. We don't understand, though, that maybe, just maybe, the individuals on the other side are thinking the same thing. But if neither of these groups actually have a fundamental understanding of the entire kaleidoscope of what values exist, or the spiritual mechanics, I'll throw it back at, like I did last time, I guess, that govern human consciousness and health and wellness, and we're only just extrapolating tiny bits from our little clique of what we think is truth, then this cycle never ends, because the people just keep getting born. New people are born, older people die, older people end up becoming more settled down and wise or indifferent, depending on what ends up happening to them. And then the new youth wants to come change the world, but then they got to figure out that they don't know half the things they think they know in terms of wisdom, unless they're wise. But very few people want to actually take the time and study wisdom. Am I missing anything, or?
No.
All right. I hope that helps. I have no idea. But I really don't think there's. I mean, everything seems to stem back to this sort of metaphysical plane of reality that's beyond just like politics is like the icing, but the root of everything are these issues of like greed, right? Insecurity, misguided sense of purpose, lust, for lack of a better word, right? Coveting, like power or something.
It's it, power.
Or power, yeah, I could just say power, yeah. Or just a good old thrill for violence that's uncontrolled, right? Instead of just taking it out off and watching pro wrestling or playing Street Fighter, you just need to be mad at the world and do something stupid and unfortunate, right? Like destroy a tarmac. Don't crush down and eradicate your enemies. Rather, love them. Show them this show and show them how opposing views can work in harmony together. And set the example by hitting a like and subscribing.